end of IFA Congress musings in the South Bank Center. And behind us, you can't see it, is River Thames. Beautiful setting. If only some of the sessions were held with the delegates being able to see River Thames. But all in all, Mukesh Bhai, I think another fantastic London Congress. Some sessions were riveting. I think your session was one of the highlights, unilateral treaty override. So we'll start with that. We'll come to the other sessions, the digital services, tax, some interesting discussions earlier today on recent developments in the international tax world. But your session particularly on unilateral treaty override, what were the key takeaways?
Well, I think when we started preparing for this session, and as a chair, you always wonder that the difficult job is going to be done by panelists. But the chair is supposed to be at least knowing what the panelists are going to talk, or at least pretending that he knows what the panelists are going to talk.
You are in the driver's seat.
Well, I felt that the overall session on unilateral treaty override is like walking into a quicksand. You know what happens when you walk into a quicksand? As you walk, you even go deeper and deeper into it. It's very interesting session. One, because of the diversity of the speakers that IFA is known for, and second, because it clearly suggested that though the topic on unilateral treaty override is not new, OECD has been talking about it since 2003 in a much more clearer manner after they amended the Model Convention in 2003. But particularly in the BEPS era, it has assumed significance. Now, this has assumed significance for a variety of reasons, because treaty override means different things to different jurisdictions. So, for example, in India, a treaty override can occur either because of interpretative provisions, either it can occur because of the GAR. It can also occur because of changes in the domestic law. So the world considers, the indirect transfer law, the Vodafone law, as a case of treaty override. The world considers dividend distribution tax as treaty override. It considers buyback tax as an override. So I think it depends on who you ask this question to. But on an overall basis, the conclusion of the panel was that it could be an interpretative treaty override, it could be unilateral changes in the domestic law that could have an override, and to what extent the provisions of Article 26 and 27 of the Vienna Convention on Law of Treaties would survive, and to what extent will the good faith theory survive in the new world is certainly become a debatable subject.
Let's move straight. We'll put Mukesh Bhai on the firing line. In the firing line, the highlight of the Congress was yesterday's session. The IFA OECD one on the tax challenges arising out of digitalization. It's occupying the mind space and all the headlines in newspapers, and is engaging the attention of no less than the G20. What did you make of all the discussions? I mean, you heard everything. You heard all sides. You heard the two-pillar approach. You heard possible emerging solution, possible residual profit split method. Then you heard the American view on where they will draw the red line. And after all of that, you still felt that the OECD, there was a feeling that the OECD is under tremendous pressure to deliver a solution by next year, especially in the face of the American warning that they too can retaliate.
Well, I think, Arun, philosophically, I always see the half glass full. So let's start with that. I think OECD has been doing tremendous job in terms of meeting the deadline, recognizing the fact that the Action Point 1 report was not sufficient to be able to address the challenges of digital taxation. There is still work in progress, I think, and I know that Pascal and his team have been working, on an overdrive to be able to meet the commitments. But now they are recognizing that the real pressures are coming in, whether those pressures are coming in because of the US policy or whether those pressures are coming in from other countries, that needs to be dealt with. As far as the US stance is concerned, and this is what we discussed in our panel yesterday on the unilateral treaty override, when David Rosenblum mentioned that The topic of treaty override is not at all new to the United States. In fact, the United States Constitution uh, uh, does talk about doesn't talk about the supremacy of the domestic law over the treaty or vice versa. It talks about how the U.S. courts have interpreted the supremacy of both the laws in a very harmonious manner because the judicial system in the United States is very, very evolved. So I guess the world will have to live with the U.S. view. Now, whether they eventually retaliate or they come on the table and we have an amicable solution, that's something that we need to wait and see. And I think any comment that I make could be an extremely speculative one.
How would you allocate to market jurisdiction? I mean, they talked about finding the normal profit of a group, then taking out the deemed residual, allocating a part of the deemed residual to market jurisdictions. I mean, then you had the U.S. representative, Mr. Chip Harter, albeit in his personal capacity, saying that it has to be a fairly high threshold of profit. What is normal? What is super profit? And how do you allocate the residual? I'm sure it's complex. But for a moment, assume you are in the OECD hot seat. What would you do?
Well, Arun, I wish I had that wisdom to be on the OECD hot seat.
Of course
but,
you do.
But I think that it's not an easy problem to deal with. And it's not an easy problem to deal with it for the simple reason that if each country considers the argument on sovereignty as a primary argument, these frictions are bound to occur. I can give some very simple solutions to my country, a law that I'm very familiar with, and I think we should, consider some of these simple solutions. I personally feel that we in India get a little bit carried with all that's happening in other parts of the world. I think we should look at India, we should look at issues in India, and we should look at other larger ecosystem surrounding the tax system. The tax system in India has come under criticism. Now, whether that criticism is coming in because of the certainty and predictability of the tax policy or it's coming in because of the excesses of the administration, the fact is it is there. And that just puts us in an uncompetitive position from the point of view of attracting the foreign investment. So if attracting foreign investment is a primary object, then I think we should go slow.
On unilateral action.
We should go slow on unilateral action. We should consider source-based rules, but in a far more calibrated manner than what we have done. And more importantly, I think we should have a administration of the policy in a very, very transparent and open manner, and not scare away investors or scare away people in the digital tax. Because you see,
Are you saying equalization levy, having collected 900 crores recently, I mean, that's the figure we hear. You think it wasn't worth it, or it isn't worth it, you think? On a 13 lakh crore direct tax collection,
Arun,
when you look at that number as a proportion.
Well, Arun, if you look at simply the 900 crore and 13 lakh crore, it's a drop in the ocean. I think what we should do is we should have an ability to measure that by collecting 900 crores, have we in any manner caused a degree of uncertainty? And if the degree of uncertainty is of a magnitude, which would not have been worth for us collecting 900 crores, then it's not worth it. So, for example, India was the first country to legislate equalization levy. We should ask ourselves, should we have been the first one? It's a different story altogether that, we keep on thumping our chest now and say, well, look at what France has done, look at what Italy is doing, look at what Czech Republic is doing. I don't think that's the right way to look at it, in my view. I'll give you another example. We have equalization levy, whether we like it or we don't like it, we have it. But we also have a law on significant economic presence, which fortunately has not been put in place. Are we willing to make a statement that this is indeed a unilateral levy, and that this unilateral levy will go away, and it will go away after a multilateral? We haven't made that statement.
Yeah.
That's what certainty is all about. And I think that is where we have, in my view, failed in our responsibility. And I think 900 crores is a paltry sum of money. Yeah. I would rather bank on making our regulations, I won't use the word liberal, but simple, easy to administer from a point of view of collection of tax and attract more investment in the country.
We'll come to that. Uh, I think one of the panelists yesterday who represented a developing country, Colombian tax administrator, she made a very, I think it was Miss Natalia, and she made a very telling comment. She said that you need carve-outs in any solution for the simple reason that a developing country like Colombia needs to offer tax incentives to attract investments, and that investment goes to build infrastructure. It's helped the hotel industry immensely, and she did have a note of caution for everyone. She said that when you levy a market-based tax, do not forget that ultimately the customer may have to pay more. The services will get costly.
Correct, absolutely. So I think I'm. By the way, I'm not a supporter of exemptions and tax holidays. Much against the desire of many people. I feel that predictability is more important, certainty is more important, the ease of administration is more important, a mechanism to avoid disputes is more important, a mechanism to deal with disputes is more important, a settlement mechanism is important, because no foreign investor is interested in testing their patience in the Indian courts.